Hey everybody, I'm Paul Wilke.
And I'm David Oro, and you're listening to The Embargoed, the greatest PR podcast of all time.
Damn straight. There's always something to talk about and a point to make.
And we're going to do it when we want, which is usually every other week.
Whether it's tech, business, sports, music, or your mama, we're going to cover it.
All of it comes from the point of view of public relations, reputation, and communications. Today is Thursday, September 15th, 2022. Welcome to The Embargoed with my co-host, Paul Wilke. Paul, how you doing?
I'm good, David. How you doing?
Doing all right. Listen, this is the first time we've done international shows before. We've done all the way to New Zealand and Australia, bottom of the earth. Today, we're recording early because we have our guest from London. His name is Andy Abramson. I said it right. And this is going to be a fun one because we're talking comms, which we always talk about, but there's also involved wine, cars, and sports. This is this guy's background, and we're excited to have him on the show today. And, you know, Andy, welcome to the show, first of all, Andy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, guys. I'm looking forward to it because I've listened to some of your shows, and it reminds me of my old days of World Tech Roundup that Ken Rakowski and I did for about 13 years together in the early days of podcasting. There wasn't even a pod to cast. We just streamed.
So you had professionalism thrown out the door as well, right? So
absolutely. Throw it out the door. We didn't even let it in the door.
We were kind of that way. So listen, tell us a little bit about yourself. I kind of hinted at a few things that you are involved with, but it's actually pretty impressive. And I'm like, wow, you've been having a lot of fun along the way, and you're obviously still working, so you must be having a blast. Can you give us the audience a little bit of background on what you do? And
I tell people I've never worked a day in my life. I've had fun every day. And even on the most stressful days in PR and corporate crisis management, it's still fun to me. I started out way too early. I was 14 years old. I got hired to stuff tickets in a pro sports team, the Philadelphia Wings, in Philadelphia's ticket office when I was 14 by the owner because I sold him an ad for my junior high school yearbook. And 2 weeks later, they hired a PR director, a guy named Cy Roseman, who was literally my mentor. And he said, forget about stuffing tickets. You're going to work for me in the PR department. And my last assistant's now director of production at the Spectrum. I said, sounds good to me. And so I started doing the stats. I started stuffing press releases in envelopes. My joke used to be I went from tickets to news releases. And then I started to deliver them. And that's how I got to know the media. And I learned at 14 how to talk to media and how to work with media. So much so that I was actually asked by media during games, is there something we missed? And I learned how to pitch an angle. Now, I didn't know I was doing that. I just did what came naturally. The reporters thought, oh, here's some 14-year-old kid. We'll get some stuff. But I already knew about discretion. And as time went on, I ran a division of the Philadelphia Flyers called Hockey Central, building 25 programs, some of which still exist to this day. And I've been gone 33 years. That'll tell you how I build programs that can last longer than you, which is what you have to do when you build properties. That was like the Flyers Cup and the Keystone Games and Pennsylvania Cup, a bunch of other things, Mites on Ice, House Leagues. And as time went on, I moved corporately to Upper Deck. I did a little stint with the Denver Nuggets, helped them get sold, which was really my first foray into getting something sold. I didn't realize I was doing it, but I did it. But I also realized I've been working with startups all my life, and went over to the Upper Deck company, did sports marketing, and then in 1993 I started my own shop and haven't looked back, and have been guest CMOing, as I like to say, in a bunch of companies as well. And that's kind of my career in a nutshell. But I've done sports, I've done entertainment, I've done tons of telecom, especially voice over IP and mobile. We've got 56 exits under our belt for about $6 billion. And we'll talk all about that kind of stuff as well, and some other fun things we've done. I mean, I've had a fun career, and I'm not done yet.
It's interesting. We had a sports, Kevin, our original co-host here, wanted to get into sports PR, and we actually had the former PR director for the San Diego Chargers on one of our episodes here. And it's to me, it's like you're close to stardom, but you're doing a lot of the same communication things of finding news stories, telling angles, sitting out press releases, creating collateral and all that. you must love it, because obviously the one thing that is a knock on that, those guys, apparently it's not the same kind of pay rate for people that are in like the tech industry or others on that front. I guess it's a little bit lower, but the fame.
No, you get paid a lot less in sports. The athletes make the money and the owners make the money. Yeah. You literally, if you do your job right, you have a job for life in most organizations, except the ones that are owned by like large corporations now and hedge funds. Yeah. The family-owned sports businesses, people have been there for 25, 30 years. I'm sure had I stuck around, I would have stuck around until Ed Snyder passed away with the Flyers. But I made the decision to leave when I was about 28, 29 to join the Denver Nuggets. And the reality is that you do a lot more. And I like to say that sports PR, at least what I did, and it wasn't really, it was PR, it was communications, it was media relations, it was event development, is more like integrated marketing than it is true publicity. And there's a big misnomer, I think, in the whole world that all public relations practitioners do is publicity, and we don't. We do a lot more than that. And everybody thinks all we do is pitch stories, and we don't. We're actually more set up to deliver value, and that's why I call what we do value creation communication at Comunicano. What we're more about is creating that value that directly affects the sale price of a business, or the ability of a product to get sold, or an ecosystem partnership to come in, which boosts your enterprise value. And that's doing everything that's above the line before you pay for advertising. And a lot of people mistake the fact that PR practitioners don't understand advertising. I would say the smart ones do. We just understand how to get it for free.
Hey, that's a good one. I like that one.
One of the things that fascinated me looking through your bio was, your sports PR experience, your trading card experience, corporate wine. You run the gamut. And one of the things that I know, at least with people of my age and PR people, and David, I think you're the same way. I think we're all failed. We all failed. We all wanted to get into sports PR, and we just weren't able to. But so my question is, what possessed you to leave the sports PR business?
Show me the money. No, here's what happened. You get to a point where I was with the Flyers at that point almost 13 and a half years. I was 28 and a half years old. I had built their entire, what's called today it would be called fan development. So the entire time I was there, the mission that was handed down to me by Ed Snyder and his business partner, Aaron Siegel, is still alive and like another uncle to me, was to promote, stimulate, and develop interest in the sport of youth hockey in the Delaware Valley. And Ed's untold story was, if you get kids playing hockey, their parents will take them to games. And then when the kids grow up, they will continue to go to games. And you ensure the longevity of your season ticket base. And up until the time of Comcast taking control of the Flyers, that was a very true story. But the programs obviously started to be eliminated, and the love and care that we had given the youth hockey community for well over 20 years, because they continued, well past the time I left. But things like the Flyers Cup that I created, literally when I say I created it, I can remember the arguments with some of the high school hockey league presidents who couldn't understand why giving them 50% of the gate for one league, 25% to the other, and 25% to the other, and we weren't taking anything, was a good deal. Literally, the hours that I spent convincing one league president to agree to the Flyers Cup. Now that was 1979-80. It's now 2022. So 42 years later, there's still a Flyers Cup, and people are still making money, and the Flyers get nothing from it. Mm-hmm. Doing the little things with the kids on the ice called Mites on Ice, and having an argument with Phil Esposito over a locker room, and having to remind Phil that, yes, Phil, I'm the same person that kicked you out of the locker room on May 19th, 1974, the night the Flyers beat the Boston Bruins for the Stanley Cup. Or the afternoon they did that, and I needed them to leave because my lacrosse team, the Philadelphia Wings, I was working for at 14, was coming in to play the game that night at 7:30, and the players were lining up and they were saying, "Opie, get us in the blanking locker room." I'm like, I'm the only person from management in the building at this point. And everybody else is either partying with Ed Snyder and Joe Scott and Fitz Dixon in the director's lounge, or they're stuck in the parking lot trying to get in because it was bedlam. So yeah, I've had fun doing things. And the Mites on Ice still exist. And the house leagues that we created are now under the umbrella of Snyder Hockey. But no one knows the work that I did, not that much, behind the scenes to make these things possible, from a PR background, from an events background, from a business background. And at a certain point in time, a dear friend of mine to this day, Andy Pock, was selling sponsorships for us in New York. As we were doing Celebrity All-Star Hockey Game, we were going to do something that had never been done before. We were going to bring in the Celebrity All-Stars, which at the time were the late Alex Trebek, the late Alan Thicke, the late John Saunders, Matthew Perry, Jason Priestley, Richard Dean Anderson was MacGyver, the original MacGyver. The Olympians like Mike Ruzioni, Jimmy Craig, Jack O'Callahan, Eric Strobel, Jerry Hauser from Slapshot, Killer Carlson and Slapshot, who was also in the Brady Brides, who's still a friend of this day. And we were going to bring them in to play a game against the Flyers alumni without an NHL game behind it. And everyone goes, "You're nuts. You're not going to sell a ticket. You're not going to sell a sponsorship." And I knew I had a home run. I knew I had a hat trick. And Andy looked at me and she said, we had this joke, was her, it was a guy named Armando Fitz, a former football player from Middle Tennessee. And we'd run around New York together selling sponsorships, or trying to, and we did. And she said, "You're not being appreciated for how good you are. Take the opportunity when it comes and leave." And I did. And she was right. And then I went to work with my friend John Gardner, who was a former quarterback behind Joe Theismann at Notre Dame, who was one of the top salespeople I ever knew in my life. May he rest in peace. John said, "Come work for me in Denver and help me build an organization there." And I went. And then unfortunately, the team got sold when we were there less than 9 months after being there. And that's when I went back and I joined Footcone Belding. I took over the Celebrity All-Star Hockey team, and the rest was history there. And then we all went upper deck. So things happen for a reason. But why did I leave an organization like that? Well, one, you don't make a lot of money working in pro sports. You get a lot of benefits. You get out all the speeding tickets you get in town. You can park your car anywhere. You're welcome into any nightclub. Literally, I got pulled over. "Who do you work for?" "Philadelphia Flyers." "Oh, see ya." Because we used to use the police for traffic work at all our games. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that you don't make a lot of money in sports unless you're a player or an owner or a GM or a coach. Everybody else, salaries are below scale unless you're just somebody who the owner feels is unbelievable and cannot leave. And usually that person is making sure nobody else makes any money. It's time to leave at 28.
Andy, the sports teams, it's a lot of it is family business, right? And if you are in the private sector working in a family business, yes, there's going to be people that are paid well, that are super valuable to the company. But unless you're part of the family, you're probably not going to get paid that well, right? And so, you're doing a private sector corporate company where it isn't a family business, the pay scale is a little bit better, I think, right?
So the irony was that the people who owned the Nuggets also came out of the TV business. They owned WFBS in Miami and WGB something in Philadelphia. I won't tell you what FBS stands for, but you can probably figure out what the WF, World's blanking stands for. They were used to paying people really good money. And John said to me, he goes, "You're going to make more money here than you ever did." And I was making about $27,000 a year, I remember, for the Flyers in 1988. And my base was triple that. But my commission structure was almost 10 times that. Mm. And literally, when I went back to college, my line to my professor whose class was sold out, and I needed to go back because I wanted to finish my degree. He said, "Well, my class is already 3 students over." I said, "I don't care. How many students giving up a job between $250,000 and $275,000 in front of them?" He goes, "Okay, you're in." Yeah. And we became good friends. So it wasn't true that people don't make money in sports. If you're on the sales side of sponsorship and on that side, there's money to be made. And that's where I learned to sell, and that's where I learned to make money.
Yeah. So, okay. So you're doing the sales. What I want to talk to you about a little bit is this notion of starting out in PR, but you've had roles as a CMO. And there's a lot of PR professionals who just kind of stay on that corporate communications track. They created this new role in the last 10 to 15 years called the chief communications officers, right? Which is, I think it's a fair distinction because communications sometimes isn't doing a lot of marketing, but you're holding that CMO role. And there's a lot of people in this profession that want to, can't figure out how to make it to that CMO level. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you're doing that and what it takes to get to that?
Well, I think, let me first address the Chief Communications Officer title. That's largely a result of the fight between people like the investor relations person, the PR director, and the CMO. And the PR person has never had a seat at the table. If you think about it, in enterprise companies and large corporations, other than some of the more European-centric groups like Nokia did have a senior communications person on their executive council every week, the PR practitioner has never been the director of PR, the VP of PR, VP of communications, never had that seat. He was always reporting to someone else, chief operating officer, CFO, maybe the CEO, but he still didn't have a seat at the table, or she didn't have a seat at the table.
It's like a silent seat at the table in some cases.
What's that?
It was like a silent seat at the table in some cases.
But the elevation of the importance of communications in companies, especially with the advent of the internet, it became a whole different ballgame. And I'm not talking so much even about the rise of social media, because social media is a phenomenon that keeps evolving and becomes more and more a paid function and less a PR function over time. Mm-hmm. But companies decided to give that person a seat at the table, and largely it was also because of the opportunity to promote someone who would solve another problem at the executive suite, which was either color or gender. And so a lot of this happened at a time where there was, rightfully so, a movement in those directions for the advancement of others to the executive suite. And they were able to do that. And then more importantly, there were longstanding loyal soldiers in the company who knew more than any of the newcomers. So why wouldn't you want that veteran male or female at the table when you're making important business decisions? To your question about how do you cross the line from being in the PR world to the marketing world, I like to jokingly say I'm an advertising guy inside a PR man's body. Yeah, I know how to do PR, I know how to pitch a story, but my degree's in advertising. I spent time with Footcomb Belding in their impact division, which was integrated marketing. At Upper Deck, I was running sports marketing, which was largely paid. So that's on the advertising side, but I was also running PR. And the funny thing was, I wasn't hired to go to Upper Deck to run PR. I'm sitting in a meeting one day with a bunch of the brand managers and the VP and our agency at the time, Verse and Marsteller, and their team from LA. And the only person who knew how to make sense out of what was being talked about was me. So they quickly changed me from the director of sports marketing, or manager of sports marketing and promotions, to manager of sports marketing and public relations, literally before my business cards got printed, because I was only there a day. And I think that a lot of PR people do understand marketing. They do understand advertising. They do understand the numbers, and they do understand how to grow a brand. And, I've been fortunate for the three companies that I've now held the CMO title for. It's more about building the brand than owning the number. Owning the number is owned by sales in two of the cases. A lot of times you have to own the number. I am the first one to admit I don't want to own the number. I like to jokingly say there's income and expense. Marketing's on the expense side, but we're responsible for bringing in the income by telling the story the right way. So you have to have the understanding of profit and loss. You have to understand income and expenses. And you also have to think about how you articulate your story and your brand message. And there's no better person than someone who's come up from the PR side to fit with a background in advertising to build a brand story.
So I think where the big holdup, particularly in this modern digital age, I think a lot of investment is going towards digital marketing these days, and PR people don't necessarily they see it, they work with it, and they can probably jump on any Marketo or platform tool to get qualified leads in and all of this stuff there. But it's something that if you're in a sales heavy organization and you're wanting leads, it's something that PR people don't touch, a lot of. But, if you get some good press, leads are coming in, right?
Well, the fact is that the very first place a person who considers interacting with a business looks is the About Us. Who are these people? Then the second place they go is the news section. What kind of coverage have they gotten? Then the third is who's the team behind the business. Those are the places they go before they look at the product. Sophisticated buyers. So whether it's the work I did with SkySwitch and they got sold for a ridiculous amount, the founders were all very happy, especially the lead founder, or Fonative, they got bought by Finvi and an astronomical exit based on what was invested. And now what I'm doing with AEHRA at building their foundation of their brand and telling their story and starting to get media coverage and all the things that we want, because PR always happens before promotion. And then PR occurs before you start spending. It's very foolish that you're talking about digital marketing. If you don't have anything to actually sell, if you don't have a product to take an order for, all the digital marketing is like opening up a window and throwing a laundry basket of $100 bills out the window, because people are very fickle. And if you start trying to sell them before you have a product to sell, what have you done? You've only opened the door. I was having this conversation with another PR pro yesterday. I said, have you ever watched a NASCAR race? And are you familiar with the concept of drafting? Well, all you do is if you become the category captain, the first one in, and you keep telling everybody a story and you have nothing to sell, somebody else comes in with a lesser product and slips right by you. So you don't try and sell a product you can't sell. You build a brand first.
Yeah, good point.
So Andy, you sort of lead into one of the things we normally start with a guest, but tell us about what you're working on right now.
So I'm working on probably the most exciting electric vehicle company in the world called AEHRA. We're based in Milan, Italy. We will be revealing an SUV in about a month's time, and then a few months later we'll reveal a sedan. We'll go on sale in 2024, 2025 for delivery. That's how far out you have to be in the automobile business when you're building things to create platforms and decide what ecosystem partners you're going to bring on for things like batteries and entertainment systems and even down to the tires. So I'm building the brand for AEHRA.
Or the screws.
Or the screws. Or the power adapter that you're going to use. And AEHRA is redefining luxury. We're in the high premium category, the ultra premium category. Cars are going to sell for between $160,000 and $180,000 US, which isn't a lot when you look at what some of the other brands are now talking about coming out with cars in the $300,000 range. It's all electric. It's sustainable from the ground up. The designers have come out of some brands that you've heard of, like Lamborghini and Ital Design, which is an Audi group. Genesis. We've got a head of purchasing came out of Ferrari. So all these people are leaving other established Italian brands to come over to AEHRA because we've got the designer from Lamborghini, Filippo Perini. And Filippo has been behind things like the Huracan and other legendary Lamborghini products. Alessandro Serra has been with him for 20 years. They've worked together at Lambo and at Genesis. So there's a whole consistency of great designers, and we're a design-led company. And it's exciting to take a company from invisibility to visibility. And that's what I'm doing. I'm having fun. And right now, the biggest stuff I'm working on is, guess what? PR and events. Because at this stage of the company's life, that's what we should be doing. Not spending money on.
You just mentioned it earlier. You don't have something to sell, really, like a product to go sell, but you want to create some awareness around things and build excitement for it and lay the groundwork for when you're ready to pump out a bunch of fine Italian performance sports cars, I guess, that are electric.
I like, well, they're not sports cars. They're going to be, they're going to be super premium luxury cars. We call it high premium or ultra premium. What we're finding is that the audience is not just 50-year-old men and up. It's actually lower in the 40s. It's women, almost the ratio. We just did some survey work, and the ratio of men to women is pretty close, which again flies in the face of all the data that when I looked at the business plan a year ago. So quite happy that we did a bunch of research with the Savanta folks to figure all this out. But I like to say that, everybody has a story. It's who tells it for you. And that's what we're doing right now, getting other people to tell our story.
That's exciting. Are you spending a lot of time in Italy?
A lot of time in Italy. I've spent a lot of time in London and less time at home in the last 12 months, and have been enjoying. And so everybody says, how do you not gain weight? I said, well, it's all the work you're doing. And then when I come to London, I'm doing a lot of walking. So
you're in London today, you go to Italy, and then your home base is back in Vegas for you. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I jokingly say, guys, that my home is seat 1F on an airplane.
I have my first business trip travel in 2.5 years.
Oh,
in 2 weeks. First time I'm traveling, and I'm leaving SFO, and I'm flying 2 hours and 40 minutes to the great city of Denver.
nice.
It's going to be weird. I got to figure out my travel rhythm. Andy, I'm sure you have that all together.
I have it down to a science.
Yeah.
Though it's interesting. I've flown the Virgin flight from New York because I like to take the daytime flight. It really reduces the amount of jet lag you have. It's the best flight. You take it, it leaves at 8:15 in the morning. It lands at 8 o'clock at night, usually a little early. If I didn't carry on bags, I would have been out the airport by 8:20 into my hotel by 9 o'clock. Well, with bags, it takes a little longer. But they changed the boarding procedure. Now, they made it faster, but it was a surprise. And I just flew it a month and a half ago or 2 months ago. They've changed. All the airlines are changing things up. And so you have to expect a little bit. I'm telling everybody who travels, always plan to fly a little earlier than you used to. Always expect a delay and have a contingency plan. Now, I was named Business Traveler of the Year in 2014 by Business Traveler magazine for how I travel, not how much I travel. And I love to talk to the travel reporters because I'm probably a 10 million mile flyer at this point. There's a lot changing in travel, and it's not the same as it was. I've been flying around since 2020, December 2020. But I can tell you guys that, David and Paul, it is definitely not the same experience that you had if you haven't been flying, because there have been steady changes in the way the airlines are working because they lost a lot of talented people. So they're having to gear down to the talent that's working now and interacting with customers. And as I said to a GM friend of mine in the hotel business in San Francisco at the Intercontinental, because we were talking about the hotel experience of late, and I said, you're still paying the same or more, but you're not getting the experience you used to pay for. Yeah. And therein lies, that gap is what PR has to solve. The PR firms are not doing a good job, or PR teams of hotels and airlines are not doing a good enough job of educating the people on the changes. Oh yeah, during COVID, but COVID became the excuse for poor service.
Yeah.
And customers no longer can accept that. To the point where I'm just
it's a shame because they had an opportunity to rewrite the narrative. You had 2 years to craft a narrative that tells the story of what the tourism industry is going through and how instead of how service is changing, how it's evolving.
Yeah, I've seen the frustration here. I mean, even here where I am, I'm in a big tourist place in Napa Valley, and just they're big on experience in doing that, but at the same time, lots of places are using it. The problem is you can't find good workers here, and they just haven't come back. But the excuse is getting old and tired, and I'm a big champion of it. I sit on the Napa Valley Tourism Board of it, but even when I go out locally, and I know like half the people, the patience, I could see it wearing thin on the consumer in all sectors: travel, wine, tourism, and
it is.
We're going to dining in restaurants and stuff.
It is, and the unfortunate thing is you're being asked to pay the same amount or more than you did before,
inflation,
or more.
Yeah,
and you're getting a less than desirable experience. And if you complain, they get upset instead of realizing that the reason they have a job is on the other side of the table or the counter or the bar. And smart hoteliers, smart restaurateurs are quick to recognize a sophisticated customer and make sure the customer is appreciated versus, I mean, like my friend Jeffrey Strauss was Pamplemousse Grill in San Diego and Solana Beach. He put up a tent. When he had to close because of a fire, he made sure that Thanksgiving dinners were held for everybody by finding a place across the way at the racetrack. No one ever complains about their service from him because he didn't change a thing. He didn't change his people.
Yeah.
He paid them while the restaurant was closed for a fire. I call him the luckiest guy in the world. He had a fire a month before COVID hit, and he had to close the restaurant. And then when COVID had closed all the restaurants, he was covered by business interruption insurance, and all of his staff got paid the whole time. But he made sure that when they came back, same staff worked. The Intercontinental Hotel in San Francisco paid their staff while they were closed. The Intercontinental Avenue Monceau in Paris paid their people 75% and renovated so their staff would all be back. Now that's smart ownership. And they all found ways to cover the cost of keeping people. And the service experience in those places is no different. So a lot of it comes down to, and this is a PR problem, communicating to your workers that you should stick around.
Yeah.
You know, PR, again, it's not just publicity. It's internal communication as well.
Andy, we're coming near the end here. I had one thing. I mentioned Napa Valley. Your resume also includes wine. What is that all about?
So my good friend Doug Marjoram owns the Marjoram Wine Company. One day had an event, and I had done a weekend trip with my then wife and a bunch of friends from Skype and my company. And Helene and I stuck around, and I made a wine. And everybody in this, it was Make a Wine with Doug Day. And he said to everybody, hey, if you want to see what an example is of a wine that you should make, taste Andy's. And then they did a blind tasting, and it came in first with him. So we made half a barrel, or we were supposed to make half a barrel, and something happened. And his assistant winemaker used the juice that was supposed to go into my wine, so we had to make a different wine. So I drove up on a weekend, his birthday weekend, and hung out with him and his dog Patches on a Saturday morning. And
is this in Napa? Is this in Napa?
No, this is in Santa Barbara.
Santa Barbara, okay.
To me, Napa is a 4-letter word. But we made a Syrah-based wine, 98% Syrah, 2% Grenache, of some of the best fruit in Santa Barbara. Colson Canyon, I'm drawing Purisima, a couple different blends of Purisima Syrah, Clone 1, Clone 99, and a few other vineyards. And so I only made half a barrel, so that's about 150 bottles. And we took some to France, and Mark Williamson, who owns Willie's Wine Bar, was having lunch with us at the Découverte de Rhône in Gigondas, and we had a bottle in a brown paper bag, and he's pouring a little bit off to different winemakers. Everyone's wondering what it was. He wouldn't say. And he just left the bottle, and then there's all this buzz. Why was this California wine so good here in Gigondas? And another friend took a bottle and put into a blind tasting in the Languedoc against wines from the Roussillon, Languedoc, and the Rhône. And I can remember this day, I was in Madrid having dinner with my friend Tatiana, and I get this text. Can you give me a description about the wine? Can you tell me where it's from? Can you tell me where it's My friend Bernard, who ran the tasting room at the Languedoc, Massa Sporta. It's a big tasting. He's tasting it against all these amazing producers. And at the end of the night, as we're walking back to Tatiana's apartment, I get a text, Andy, the AA cuvee came in first. Well, I didn't know who he was tasting against at the time. So I asked him the next morning, and then I was like blown away. And there's a video somewhere where he tells the story. So that led to me making wine. And then I got named the Grenache ambassador by the Grenache Association. Tomorrow's International Grenache Day, by the way.
Yay!
And that's why I decided to make a wine in 2013 called the Ambassador's Blend. I also made a wine called the Hat Trick Special, which is an ode to the Philadelphia Flyers. I've been making wine since, I guess, 2010 for the 2009 vintage. And I have a lot of fun doing it. And we sell all we make. And usually the only place you can taste it other than at Tess in Los Angeles is if you're with me.
Wow, good. Those are the best wines, because I know Napa's a 4-letter word for you, but all the tourists that come up here end up getting the popular wines that are on the highway. But here in the valley, there's plenty of other wines that
Oh
are
yeah.
single row grapes, and they're all sold within the valley before anybody can get their hands on them.
I mean, things like Staglin, Harlan, Bryant Family, Screaming Eagle, Colgan, Cardinal. You've got wines. You've got Ladera makes killer wines. My friend Michael Keenan's wines are some of the best wines around, and one of the best values in Napa Valley.
Yeah, so some of those wines, the lists are small. The vineyards are really small, and it's always surprising to me where they came from. And I can't even get on them, right? There are other winemakers holding on to them for a long time. It's interesting. Your wine is kind of like that, right? You got to have the insider knowledge, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Philippe Melk is one of the top producers up there, top winemakers up there now. He's doing some really cool stuff. You've got, I mean, Napa wines are incredible. To me, it's about finding the next Napa constantly as I travel the world. I've been in Mexico. I've tasted wine in Valle de Guadalupe. I just started a wine marketing company with a partner. I've been in Arizona tasting wines in the high desert, some amazing fruit from down there, Texas Hill Country, New York State, Washington State, Walla Walla, all over California, Santa Barbara, Paso Robles, and then across Europe. So there's great wine everywhere. And to me, every bottle has a story, but it's about the underdiscovered wines and wine regions around the world where you really find something that you're really going to enjoy and it's special to you. And that's what I'm all about when it comes to wine.
Well, the big thing is what you got to do with the flyers for anybody that's 21 and up. You got to keep these young kids off the White Claw and start drinking the wines.
White
Get back
Claw,
in the wine.
White Claw is Zuma. I don't know. So I heard a story about White Claw. To me, all that carbonated fruit juice with alcohol is something that I don't understand. I'm a purist. I love my gin. I love mezcal.
Yeah.
Those are the two spirits I'll drink when I have to have one. But at the end of the day, give me a good glass of wine that's made by an artisan winemaker, and there's a story behind it. And meet the winemaker, and then do what I like to say, which is taste, touch, tell. Because every wine, you want to taste it, you want to touch the winery, you want to tell a story, because every bottle has a story.
Well, Paul, unless you have any other questions.
No, man, it's been a worldwide whirlwind of a conversation with you, Andy. I think we covered just about everything: corporate PR, wine, cars, sports. I think we missed fashion and crypto. I think we got everything else.
I don't do fashion. I did fashion once. We sold every product. It's called Handcuffs, and Marshall's still my client and another business in real estate now. And the only thing we didn't talk about was Jeremy Pepper, who introduced us.
Oh yeah, Jeremy Pepper. We got to give a shout out to Jeremy Pepper. Jeremy was one of those guys I met him in the early 2000s, and the dude was just everywhere. And I remember him being everywhere, and then he was also blogging, which was a new thing, which apparently, Andy, you got a story behind that.
Yeah, Jeremy, I was doing the Nokia blogger program. So up until 2005, there wasn't a corporation that had either successfully penetrated social media, but more importantly, there wasn't a corporation in the Fortune 100 who dared to put their name on a social media program, because bloggers were treated like, and I was a blogger just like Jeremy. I had VoIP Watch, which was one of the most read telecom blogs at the time and for many years after, where we were treated like something on the bottom of your shoe that you pick up walking through the park because somebody else didn't pick up what they dropped or what was dropped. So Nokia asked me to start a review program, and I called it the Nokia Blogger Relations Program, because they said, what are you going to call it? And I said, we're going to call it what it is. And within 24 hours of launching, it blew out the servers at Vario. Everybody from Om Malik to Dana Blankenhorn had socialized it, because you didn't tweet back then. There was no tweet. You wrote a blog post.
Yeah.
And the servers blew out so much that I got a call from the Vario people saying, we need to move you to a different shared server. And then we need to move it to your own server by Monday. It's like, and I'm like, well, I don't have permission yet to do that, but okay. And I'll just bill Nokia. And the program took off like a shot. The Washington Post credited me with Nokia's sales fortunes changing. I don't count Nokia in one of our exits, not fair. And we ended up having some of the top reporters of the future I'd picked. Om Malik, who you probably all remember from Giga Om. Michael Arrington had just launched TechCrunch. He was in it. A guy named Alex Saunders, who's now running sustainability at Microsoft, who was a blogger in Canada. Rich Tarani, who ended up owning TMCnet in the telecom space, was really big. And a bunch of other people in the industry. Kevin Toffel, who at that time was with JK on the Run, who's now got his About Chromebook blog and got acquired by Giga Om. Matt Miller from ZDNet. who otherwise known as Palm Solo. And these guys were all in the program. And Jeremy was another one of the bloggers I put in the program.
Yeah.
And Jeremy wrote an article on his blog about why Nokia was getting it right compared to everybody else. And I'll never forget, a few months after we did our program, Sprint did theirs.
Right.
And where we sent everybody a gorgeous box with a box inside that you opened up. There was a handwritten letter on parchment paper. And then you had your disk of all your materials, and you had your phone. What did Sprint do? They took a phone, shoved it in a brown manila envelope, and mailed them out with a note saying, for more information or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then somebody else did a computer program almost the same way as Sprint. And one by one, people started to realize that this Nokia program had a lot of gravitas. And we did that for 6 years with Nokia, and it was one of the most successful things ever done. And I was hiring a firm in Australia for TruePhone about 2012, 2013. And the founder of the company, when we finally had dinner, a guy named Michael something or other, he said, after we started digging into this, we didn't realize that you're the father of Nokia's social media. That's the seminal program for blogger relations. And I'm like, guess so, because to me, it was just doing, like you guys, doing another program for a company.
Yeah, just trying something new, right? Breaking new ground, getting.
That's what I like to do. Yeah. You guys are great. I love your show. If I'm ever up in the Bay Area, if I'm in Napa, we should get together, Dave. Drink some wine.
Well, everybody goes to Vegas, so now I got a place to not hit up.
Hey, if you're there in CES time, I will be around.
Yeah,
I'm sure I'll have a table at some restaurant with some bottle of wine open.
Yeah, right on. Well, thank you, Andy, for being on the show.
Thank you, guys.
This has always been fun. We will catch you guys next time.
Catch you later. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.